Welcome, everyone. We'll give everybody a few minutes to join and get settled. While we're waiting for everyone to join, feel free to type in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from. I'm coming at you from Toronto, Canada. And Jason, where are you today?
Hi. How are you? I am live from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Amazing. Hi, Casey. How are you?
Hi, everyone. This is Casey logging in at 1:30 a.m. from Singapore.
Yes.
Amazing.
Thanks for joining from Singapore, Casey. We've got Lancaster, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Ohio, Tacoma with raindrops.
Bucharest, Romania.
Wow.
I love Romania.
Romania, one of my favorite countries in the world, if you can believe it. Donna, you and I are going to have to chat about Romania.
And we've got Seattle.
And Tennessee.
Oh, Tennessee. Whew. Canton, Ohio, Missouri, Austin, Texas. Yeah, I was gonna say, Donna, what are you doing there? I know Donna, and I was like, what? I didn't think she was from there. So that was a little shocking when I saw her from there. Well, Jess, we have a lot to cover. Jason, we need to chat.
Jason, you're in trouble already?
I can't wait. Jess, let's go ahead and get started.
Amazing. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us from wherever you are in the world. I'm so excited when we get a global contingent that's joining us from around the world, from Singapore to Romania to Seattle, really just emphasizing that this topic is not just isolated by geography, it really is a global issue. I'm Jess Chung from LeapGen. I get the pleasure of introducing our esteemed speakers today. Today we're talking about quiet quitting, not in the buzzwordy way, but in a way that we're really going to talk about what quiet quitting really is. Is it really about quitting, or is it more about finding better ways to engage your employees, provide opportunities for growth, learning, development? And do quiet quitters really want to quit? Or are they just looking for an opportunity to engage, to be seen, to be heard? And how can we do that? And how can we dive into that? So today joining us is Jason and Casey. Jason is a leading analyst in the HR technology space. He talks regularly about the future of work and the impact technology has on that future. He's also the co-founder and CEO of LeapGen. And Casey, who's the COO and co-founder of Disprz, which helps organizations redefine their digital skilling and learning experiences. So I'm going to hand it over to Jason and Casey. I'm so excited about this topic. It's so timely. And we'll talk about how we can potentially stop the whole notion of quiet quitting and really, truly just find ways to engage our people regardless of where you are in the world. So Casey.
Thank you, Jess. So excited to have you. Jess, you can stay on with us. You don't have to disappear.
Awesome.
I would love for everyone as we get started. I want to see if everyone in the chat can, in a word or 2 words or 3 words, give their thoughts on quiet quitting. When you hear quiet quitting, when you read it in a newspaper, if there is such a thing, or you see it online and you see quiet quitting, what do you think of? I just want to start with that. Jess and Casey, you like how I kind of just changed the agenda on us all of a sudden? Scott Lyons, nothing new, unhappy employees, boundaries, giving up, no longer engaged, poor internal comms, not going above and beyond, latest buzzword, work-life balance and boundaries, power imbalance, burnout, bare minimum. Wow, I love this. Ghosting. Toxic environment. Casey, that was a good poll, wasn't it? Got us.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Some things that I didn't expect. Quite interesting to see the varied responses that we have got.
Yeah, I love the variances in the responses, and really quickly as we get started, Brett said unknown internal opportunities. That's another brilliant one, Brett. Thank you for sharing that. I've been fairly public in my statement that I think quiet quitting as a concept is stupid. And it's sorry to be so blunt, and it's been around forever. And if you think about most of these things that you guys wrote, work-life balance, not engaged, not going above and beyond, poor internal comms, disengaged employee, bare minimum, those are all things that have been around forever. They all seem to be post 2020 things that all of a sudden the media is talking about as started by a TikTok phenomenon. But all of these, what we're going to talk about today is not necessarily the term quiet quitting, but all of the things. Oh, I just see I see another one. People leaving the organization without expressing why they wanted to leave. It's a great one, Shaitan. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Apologies if not. We're going to talk about all of these things today. All of these things that people are somehow painting as a new phenomenon, which really they're not. It's not a new phenomenon. It's been going on for a long time. Casey, I'd love for you to start by talking a little about Disprz. One of the things I love about Disprz is the way that it's tackling some of these issues that you guys put in the chat there, head on. And Casey, I'll turn it over to you to get started.
Sure. First of all, Jason and team, very happy to be here and very happy to see the kind of audience we have. A quick background about Disprz. Disprz is a global skilling SaaS startup. We are in the 7th year of our operations right now, and we provide skilling solutions for large enterprises and mid-market. We've grown really, really fast. So last 7 years have been very exciting. Today, we service close to about 250 logos, which translates to close to about 2 million users. We have a user in pretty much every continent except Antarctica. And some of the big logos that we service are Amazon, Uber, Standard Chartered Bank, and we're present globally. Large markets include Asia Pacific, Europe, and US. That's a quick background about Disprz.
Yeah, and how about a quick background on you, Casey?
Oh, okay. Born and brought up in Mumbai, which is the west part of India. Like any Indian guy, computer science graduate. Started my career as an engineer and quickly realized that my calling was sales and marketing. Pretty much worked for startups all of my life. Started my career in a very funny town in UK called Gloucester, where people used to disappear after 7 p.m. in the night. It's very difficult to see people there after 7 p.m. Worked in UK for a couple of years, worked in US for a couple of years, then came back to India. Have been in the learn tech space for more than 12 years now. And this is my second edtech startup. Prior to this, the tech startup was sold to a private equity fund in London. That's a quick background. Extremely geeky person.
For now. This person will report to me, and this person would report to me.
Sorry about that.
No, yeah, not sure where that came from. Apologies.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. Thank you, Casey. And if we look at some of the capabilities within your organization, do you want to talk to this real quickly?
Sure. So, just touching upon why do we exist? And, I'm going to talk about one of the specific reports of McKinsey about the future of work. And it says, automation and AI will force large part of the workforce, approximately close to about 400 million people, to find new jobs and learning new skills. So that's a very, very large problem statement. That's precisely the reason why Disprz exists. What we do is we help enterprises to get their workforce ready for the jobs of the future. So that's a very, very short pitch about what we do for the organizations.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. And for those of you that are new that haven't been, part of LeapGen events before, we work with organizations all over the world and really helping them think about transformation and how to transform. Just like the rest of everything that we talk about at LeapGen, when we think about engagement or we think about talent, like we're talking about today, we think about it in these three buckets. How do we develop a strategy? How do we deploy that strategy? And how do we sustain that strategy? And for all of these, I'll call them people opportunities that we talked about before: unhappy employees, ghosting, no longer engaged. We need talent strategies. We need talent strategies, and they're things that we all need to focus on going forward. To think of that, first of all, we need to realize that in today's world, we as an HR function must be digital. And when we say digital, we're not talking about technology. We're talking about making sure that we act fast, we think in an agile way, and we have an open mindset to change. Okay. I'm actually quite disappointed at our industry that a bunch of people, when they heard quiet quitting, started saying, oh, something new to work on, quiet quitting. You know, it's not something new to work on. It's something that we should have been working on for a long, long time. But what's happened in the last 2 years, which is work has changed more in the last 2 years than it's changed in the prior 50, is that employees have a voice. Employees are using that voice. And employees are talking about things and have avenues and channels because of availability bias that they didn't have before. So this is not new. I mean, if you could find all of those words that you guys put, Erica, Jess, Andy, Michael, Heidi, Dawn, Thomas, excuse me, you could find all of those words on Glassdoor, right? But because all of a sudden they showed up on TikTok, they're like, whoa, quiet quitting, big new trend, you know, that everyone needs to talk about. So very, very important to keep that in mind. Actually, I would love, just in the chat, just say yes or no whether you're on TikTok. Just say yes or no whether you actually use TikTok.
Casey, Jason, are you on TikTok?
No.
I actually do have a TikTok account. I don't use it that often, but it's funny when you actually look at these people that, you know, some people say yes, some people say no. It's probably, actually, I think it's probably 50-50. But, you know, the fact that TikTok started a phenomenon, Bryce, I would pay for you and I to be on TikTok together. But just, you know, the fact that TikTok started this phenomenon that all of a sudden everyone in HR is like, hey, we got to get on it, is really key. I think the thing that's really, really important, though, is it ties back to this first thing about mindset. What is our strategy? And I said this earlier, and I'm going to go through it really, really quickly. You know, and you guys have seen, if you've been on a LeapGen webinar, you've seen this before. It's 2022 outside of work. Now, what does that mean? If we just talk about it for a second, it means humans want to be heard. Humans want to be listened to, and a lot of people want to talk. They want to talk, they want to be listened to, they want to be heard, and they want action to be taken. That's outside of work. Inside of work, it's the same. And what we're seeing is we're seeing people that in the past hadn't brought these issues to work, all of a sudden bring them to work. Now, is that good or bad? You know, Casey, I'd actually love your thoughts on that. I mean, for me, the fact that, you know, that we can talk about mental health, and I've talked about it outside of work for a long time, but the fact that I can talk about it inside of work, I think that's a good thing. Now, does it change the way that employers have to think about the relationship with employees? Totally. But I think that's a good thing, you know, based on what's happening from a geopolitical standpoint. You know, that used to be outside of work, but at work, shh, don't talk about that. That's not something we talk about at work. Now, work and life have blended together. So, Casey, I'd love your thoughts on this, because this is a very important question that you guys all need to think about as you set what your culture is in your organization.
So Jason, for me, and I'm talking personally, I'm spending 1/3 of my life at work. And it's very, very important that I remain true to myself. So whatever I'm outside the work, I should be exactly the same when I'm inside the work, inside in office premises. So for me, I think this is something that organizations have to understand and be prepared that people are going to be same and they should be able to have a voice to say what they feel like. So I'm totally for that. You should be expressing yourself very similar to what you're doing outside the work.
Jess, what about you?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, Jason. It's about, and you mentioned the term human. It's about people versus employees, and that language that we use to describe the people in which we work with, employees versus person versus human. It's the giving people the opportunity to be who they are and to show up in a way that allows them to be genuine and to be themselves. And it's not historically been something where, you know, you had two separate boxes where you had a work self and a personal self. I love the fact that I can bring me to work because I spend so much of my life at work.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. So, like I said, the world of work, and by the way, at the end of the session, you'll get a chance to get a copy of these slides. The world of work changed more in the last 2 years than it did in the 50 prior. And it gives us, everyone on this call, an opportunity to reset and to think about how do we reshape what our now of work looks like. So what's our response to quiet quitting? You know, our response to quiet quitting is to think about how do we come up with different strategies to deal with some of the things that we've been dealing with for a long time. So Casey, I know you in the chat put your definition of quiet quitting, you know, as quickly as you could with the amount of words that I gave you, disengaged employee, but would love your thoughts on, is quiet quitting real? And maybe not the term, but the concept of a disengaged employee. Is that real?
So Jason, I think it's very real. And I think you were touching upon a point that a lot has changed in the last couple of years. So if you notice, the entire piece of the automation, new skills, new jobs, the COVID scenario, hybrid work, gig workforce, a lot is changing in a very, very short span of time. And because of this, I think there is a lack of clarity between the organization goals aligned to personal people's aspirations, what they want to do. And because that thread is broken today, people are getting extremely lost in this new environment. When they are lost, they are disengaged. And for me, that is quite quitting. And when I'm talking to a lot of HR and L&D fraternity, I'm hearing them that a lot of the survey feedbacks are saying that people are disengaged. So I think it's very, very real, Jason.
Yeah, I would love everyone's thoughts in the chat. Like, is quiet quitting real? Like, with all the definitions that we've used already, forget the term quiet quitting, but is the disengagement of employees real? I mean, it's a dumb question on my part because I know what the answer is going to be. But I think it's a lot of organizations don't necessarily say, oh, what are you talking about? Our people are disengaged. Like, we have this issue in life right now, where there's people that are disengaged for lots of reasons. There's lots of people that are tired. There've been lots of people that are dealing with more. I mean, Michael said tale as old as time. Tale as old as time. I wanted to make sure I read this. But at the same time, I'm curious as, do we think it's more than old? I mean, more than the past? And I actually believe it is. Distractions, temptations. Brett agrees with Casey. Michael said because of expectations, looking for new jobs without allowing the org to acknowledge what isn't working. Yeah, Nicole, I love that comment and hate that comment at the same time. They're looking for new jobs without allowing the organization to acknowledge what isn't working. And a lot of times, Nicole, I don't think we ask. And I think that causes people to look, or if we ask, we don't act right after it. So I'm glad we're all in alignment that quiet quitting is real. From that point, I would love to jump into this, and we're going to create a word cloud together. we're going to create a word cloud together. Okay, so we're going to use a tool called Menti and take a picture of this QR code or go into Menti. And once you get to Menti, use this code 7283-7519. We're going to send this out to everyone as part of the follow-up afterwards, but would love for you to go into Menti and just say what words come to mind. We already started this in the poll. Okay, so menti.com, there's the code. I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to go into Menti and share with you what's popping up as you guys are doing this in real time. So as you can see on my screen, look at some of the words popping up. Can you see that, Jess? Job hunting, lonely, checked out, despair, disengaged, burnout, exhausted, cheated. I didn't mean to say cheated like that, but that was just one that I thought was really, really impactful. Not
I like
heard.
the word done. I'm done.
Done. Yeah, done. That's a pretty easy one, right? Casey?
Yeah.
Done.
I like that word. I'm done.
Apathy, boredom,
Disappointment.
disappointment. How about tired of the BS?
Neglected. Defeat. Defeat is pretty strong when you think about it. That really says that, you know, they felt as though they've been fighting and they're struggling with this, and that there's an opportunity to hear them. And really, for me, what quiet quitting is about giving employees a voice and allowing them to be heard and to find ways to pull them back in and to, you know, flip this to the opposite. You know, what's the opposite of burnout? What's the opposite of, you know, checked out or frustrated? How can we flip that and find ways to flip these words and turn it into something that truly engages people?
You know, I had to
there was
stop
another-
there. Go ahead, Casey.
There was one I saw, wasted potential. You know, and I think Jason was talking about people not hearing the employees and not acting upon them. So, you know, that's a powerful one, that the employee had potential, but it was not well exploited by the organization.
Yeah, now that we've understood some of those words, we're going to launch this poll and just get a sense. Casey, what do you think the response is going to be here? Is the organization feeling the impact of quiet quitting?
It's a definite yes.
Yeah, to me, I bet it's 82%. How's that for scientific?
Wow.
But I'm guessing we're going to be about 82% yes. And I bet there's a few people that are going to say that they're not sure. But that's just my non-scientific guess. We'll wait for a few more people to go ahead and vote. Casey, I don't know if you can see the results or not.
No, I can't.
You can't. Right now it's 94%, 95%, 96% yes, 4% no. So you were closer to correct than me. Excuse me, not 4% no, 4% not sure. No was 0%. So clearly we're in that range where people are seeing this now, you know, more than ever. So thank you for doing that. You know, what we tried to do in this slides for you guys and in the handout or the content here is just to put together some graphics that you can use as you're trying to make the business case for tools and efforts around these areas. So really quickly, before I hand it over to Casey to talk about what are the levers that we can push and pull, just some more data points here. 18% of employees are actively disengaged at work, the highest count since 2013. I actually think it's more than that. Over 50% are simply not engaged. Okay, that's if you have over 50% of your workforce that's not engaged, just think about that. 50% of over 50% of your workforce not engaged. That's hard. So half are not engaged, another 18% are actively disengaged. That leaves 32% who are actively engaged. It's compared to 34% last year and 36% in 2020. So employee dissatisfaction is nothing new. But the fact that we're trending in the other way, as Don just said, that is scary, means that we have to think about what does it mean and what can we do about it. You know, the overall decline was related to the clarity of expectations, opportunities to grow, feeling cared about, and the connection. Now, you know, you see studies and it's all about comp, it's all about benefits. And I think that comp and benefits are still really important. But I think in the Maslow's hierarchy, clarity of expectation, feeling like you can learn and grow, and feeling cared about are more important now than what comp and ben used to be. And why did that change? Because of the conversation we had when we first started, that work and life have blended together. So guys, look, the sources on the bottom of these slides is Quiet Quitting Real by Gallup. And like I said, you'll get a copy of this. Many quiet quitters, you know, fit this definition. And if we look at this workforce, the most affected are managers. Why are managers more affected? Actually, I want this to be an inner. I wish everyone was live. Like, why are managers more affected? Because they're having to listen to employees in ways that they haven't listened to before, and a lot of them aren't equipped. Why is Gen Z more affected? Because Gen Z only knows this way. They haven't seen other ways before. Younger millennials, same thing. And the remote and hybrid workers, we're not building connection with these people. This is why employee experience and workforce experience is so important. And it's not about a user interface. It's how are we building connection with people? And how are we helping people to try to drive people from being not engaged to being more engaged? It's usually less about an employee's willingness to work harder and more creatively, and more about a manager's ability to build a relationship with their employee. Once again, not just getting people connected. A lot of people say, I don't understand. We've got Teams, we've got Slack, we've got Yammer. That's just getting people connected. It's all about how do I build connection? So when we think about this, it's what are the common factors? Are our managers engaged? Or is it too hard to work there for them? Are people burnt out? Do we have true accountability and line of sight into what works for people? And are we providing those opportunities to learn and grow? So the opposite of quiet quitting is the engaged employee. It's employee engagement. So when we think about this, let's ask a quick question. Are you measuring engagement? And when I say, are you measuring engagement, I am not talking about once a year. If you, Jess, if you measure engagement once a year, you better answer this no. Because that's not measuring engagement. Measuring engagement is checking in with people on a frequent basis to ask, how are they and how do they feel about the work that they're doing? Does that make sense? Y'all? Are you actively measuring engagement? Notice it says actively. Actively. That doesn't mean once a year. Okay. Now, if I look at the results, which scare me as much as the other surveys scared me. Do you know what percentage of organizations are actively measuring engagement? KC, any guess?
I can see the results, so I don't want to comment, Jason.
It's the exact same number as the people that are actively engaged, 32%.
Well, I think, Jason, what's even scarier is that the organizations that aren't actively measuring are flying blind, but they aren't actively trying to improve engagement because they don't have visibility. And I think what would be an interesting question as well would be, are you actively doing things to respond to the engagement levels of your people?
So what's very interesting is everyone knows that quiet quitting, what it means. They also understand that it's real. They know engagement is one of the reasons, but no one is measuring it. That's shocking, right?
It's more than shocking. Casey, I don't even know what to say. I'm flabbergasted, actually. I mean, it should be no surprise to people that if you're not actively measuring, how can you do anything about it?
So, Jason, do you think we should ask the question why people are not actively measuring engagement? What's the reason for it?
Yeah, I mean, I would actually, in the chat, say, why are you not? Someone actually just asked a question, which I think is really interesting. What is worth, not measuring engagement or measuring it and not doing anything with it? I personally think the latter is worse.
Yes.
Measuring it and not doing anything with it, I think it erodes trust every single day if you don't do anything with it. So Jeffrey, I think it's worse to not do anything with it, which is why you have to be ready. Nicole, I am check in 10 days after hire, 45 days, and again 90 days. Beautiful. That's exactly how our leadership explains their lack of action. I mean, but once again, trust is so key, you guys. And as trust erodes in organizations because I'm measuring and not doing anything about it every single day, not year. Every single day I don't do something about it. Guess what? More and more trust. Bravo, Nicole. Kevin loves the fact that you're doing that. Kyle said, I think some do not want the data because then they will have to do something with it, which is sad, to be honest with you. I think there's some organizations that don't even know how to do it on a frequent basis or actively going forward. So when we think about this, people want purpose and meaning from their work. They want to be known for what they're good at. And Casey, I love this framework that you set out at Disprz when it comes to what are the key drivers of engagement. And if you wouldn't mind just taking a few minutes to talk about this. I mean, it's really what we've talked about throughout, but just a little commentary from you on this would be really great.
So absolutely, Jason. So just one point, and I'll go back to the comment that Nicole mentioned. I was reading again an article by McKinsey, and it talked about an employee that has a good experience is 16 times more engaged than a person that has a negative experience. To provide a good employee experience, it is very, very important that you map out the employee life cycle. So I like what Nicole said. When the employee is recruited, when he's onboarded, when he's becoming more efficient in his work, when you're rewarding and giving a feedback to the person, when he's changing the job within the organization or outside the organization, you need to start actually measuring his experience during his entire life cycle. So I really like what Nicole said is, are you measuring the experience that the employee is having within the organization and hence how engaged he is? And some of the key drivers of those engagement are, first is about his development. Are you aligning his aspiration to the goals of the organization? Second, we always say people don't work for organization, they work for their managers. If you have a bad manager, they actually quit the organization. So do you have a manager who shows empathy towards his team and is a caring manager? The second one is, the entire piece of communicating. It's okay to over communicate. When things are changing this fast, you need to keep having the communication and dialogue open with your organization. And finally, you need to focus on person's personal strength, his aspiration, and more about his purpose in life. And you need to align that to the organization goals. So if you can take these 5 pillars and start bringing in within the framework of employee experience with an organization or the skilling strategy, you will suddenly see the engagement of the employees is improving.
You see, here's a question from Scott that just came in and says, alignment is key. Do you align core values of the org with things that matter to the employee?
That's a very, very interesting question. Actually, we are going to address that, Jason, in some of the slides ahead, actually.
Yep, exactly.
Yes.
Yeah, Scott's reading ahead as usual. But great question. Where do you see, Brett just said, love the focus on strength. Employees are given assessments in our projects that are far below their skills and abilities. Where do you think the biggest, out of these 5, is there one that you'd say is the biggest problem that you see in organizations, that people don't have a caring manager, people don't focus on strengths? Where do you see the biggest challenge?
I think for me, it's always the manager. I think manager plays a very, very, very important role. So that's the first area I would definitely focus on.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you. Okay, so to do this, we need to know our people. And we really think in order to know our people, we really have to focus on this concept of personas, knowing who our people are, knowing how they work, knowing what they want, and knowing how best to reach them as we move forward. And when we think about that, you'll see, and we just included some copies in the deck here of some example personas. What do people need? What are their frustrations? Insights or research about those employees are really, really key as we start to think about, where do we hit where we're going forward? And then to think about the journeys that we're putting in there and how do we actually drive things like development? How do we drive and insert development into a new hire process? Insert development into an ongoing performance process, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the things that are going to be crucial as we think about going forward. And what we want to talk about is how much of that is high-touch human versus high-touch digital. Where do we want to use technology to do that? And where do we want people to do that? And what we find over and over again right now is that if I don't have this high-touch digital and a way to push that out to people, because people are spread out, people aren't going into one office or one location, the chances of having it hit them is really, really hard. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to change this concept of people getting enraged that they're not being developed, enraged that they're not being motivated, enraged that people don't ask them how they're feeling, to a concept of they're engaged. And when we think about that, this is where that concept of learning and development can make a huge impact. So Casey, I'd love for you to talk about some of these things and how this drives engagement going forward.
Yes, absolutely, Jason. So, there are multiple studies that talk about, whenever people are looking for a new job or when they're looking for a change of job, they evaluate actually what kind of a skilling or a development strategy an organization has. So if you notice some of the data points over here, which you can use, 22% of the employees rank training and development as the most important benefit provided by the employer. 65% of the prospective employees say the opportunity for self-development is the decision for their accepting the offer. So we clearly know that, the kind of development strategy that an organization has is very, very important for an employee experience and is very, very important for the engagement of the employee within the organization. So, at Disprz, we have a framework that we have defined where we help organization to define a very, very scalable skilling framework, which finally results into few of the very important metrics like employee engagement, talent mobility, which I'll talk to you. But first, I'll talk to you about the framework. Jason, can you go to the next slide?
Sure.
Now, this is a very interesting framework. We have about 250 clients. We've worked with at least about 30 to 40% of those clients on this specific framework. And, I'm going to go back to some of the comments that were coming on the chat, like Scott was mentioning about alignment. Brett was talking about the capability alignment. So the first pillar about this framework is about workforce planning. What it basically means that, organizations need to understand that for us to achieve either the short-term or the long-term goals, what are the skills that we need for the future of the work? So the first thing is to understand the skills. And this is the most shocking piece. If you go to any organization, either a large enterprise or mid-market, and if you ask them, do they have job description documents ready? They don't. When you don't know what kind of skills you need from people, how do you expect them to perform their job? So the first part is understanding what skills are required. The second piece is all about alignment. How do you evaluate that the workforce that you have, the aspirations that they have, the supply of the skills that you have, how does it align to the demand of the skills you need to be successful in the future? I think there's a very, very big gap on evaluating that gap. So the second pillar of this offering is evaluating the skill gaps. So just imagine that as a C-suite, you have a skill heat map of an organization. The output of this is a skill heat map where you're understanding the demands of the skill that the organization needs, the current supply of the skills that you have that have been aligned to the people's aspiration. So you clearly understand where the gaps are. The third part of the pillar refers to how do you fill this skill gaps? And today we are not in the world where we can do one size fits all. We have to go to the level of personalization. And here we are talking not only team level personalization, we have to go to what we call as hyper personalization. We need to understand at an individual level, what are the skill gaps based on the aspiration and the organization goal? What are the learning styles of the people? I would love to hear a podcast. Someone else would love to read article. So the idea is to have hyper personalized learning journeys, which are, blended in nature and which also includes all formats of learning, which includes, let's say, education, it includes exposure, it includes experiences. So you need to think of a holistic, personalized learning experiences for your employees. And the last part is, if you do all of this, what does it mean for the organization? One, you need to actively start measuring employee engagement. You will be shocked to know that if you use this framework, the employee engagements will go up. We have multiple case studies which we can share with you how on using this framework, we have seen the employee engagement going up. The second is tying this learning outcomes to business outcomes. How can you evaluate that people who are learning, are they engaged, and are they, are those the people who are achieving their KPIs and KRAs? We have a case study with the largest e-commerce company, which actually showed that the number of damaged packages that were delivered got reduced by 3.2% by the engaged, skilled workforce. So that's the level of impact it can create. So, we will be more than happy to share at least about quite a few case studies on how using this framework, people were able to see tangible business outcome using this framework. Would love to hear your feedback. Any comments on the framework?
Yeah, you guys, I think this is great. Casey, Brett said, love this slide. Jess said, love the concept of the skills heat map. When you take a look at this, this is really holistic talent management and talent strategy. Unfortunately, most organizations still do talent management transactional instead of really thinking about this from a strategic standpoint. So I love the way that you walk through that. This is so hard for, I'd love for you to talk about this. So when we talk about a learning and development platform, and I have to just go back to the dumb, excuse my language, LMS. A lot of people are like, we already have a LMS. Like when people see learning and development platform, the next thing they say is we already have an LMS. Hey, what's a learning and development platform? We already have an LMS. So when you talk about a learning and development platform that's flexible, I'd love for you to talk about these three things and why this is different than your traditional LMS.
First of all, LMSs are old. They are actually system of records. We should stop talking about LMSs now. We are
Right there.
way beyond.
Hey, everyone, done. Remember that done? We should stop talking about LMSs. Done.
I think what we need to start thinking about is skills. And we should not think about skills from a jobs perspective. We should start thinking about skills for the employee's professional development, which could be either within the organization or it could be outside the organization. And what is also very, very important, that the skilling has to be super personalized. Only then you will start seeing an engaged employee. And the third thing which we should start doing, which no one does, do we have learning and skilling solutions that are tied to performance management system, so that we can actually track all the dollars that we are investing in skilling? How is it resulting into business outcome? I think these are the new age solution that we need to start thinking about. And the output is about, then you will see a larger number of people being engaged. You will see a larger number of people who are taking new opportunities, either vertical progression or horizontal progression within the organization. And we have also another example in our portfolio of clients. They are driving an initiative called 1% to Greatness. And 1% to Greatness also includes a lot around work-life balance. So, we should start thinking about a holistic personal development of an employee, rather than looking at only development, which is focused to the job that they're doing within the organization.
Yeah, I think this is great. Did you see some of the comments? Let's stop talking about records, system of records, LMSs, no more LMSs. Scott's a great slide. Most orgs have lots of internal talent, but don't know how to identify it and then identify skills. When you think about this concept of skills, I would love to get your response to this poll, everyone. How has learning and development impacted engagement on your team? So when you have pushed out learning and development, do you think it impacts employee engagement? Somewhat impacts employee engagement? Has no impact on employee engagement? Or not sure? And, one of the things I'd love your thoughts on this, KCR, is, for me, I think people that just push out learning and development opportunities by saying, hey, guess what? We've got a new learning and development platform, but don't actually help connect the dots as to the value that it adds, or help to connect the dots as to why this is important. I would say that it doesn't impact employee engagement, because I basically just implemented a technology, but truly didn't do a good job of helping people understand the value. And if you actually take a look at the results, 42% said somewhat, 37% said highly, 16% said doesn't, and 5% said not sure. And I mean, my guess is that when it doesn't, it's because we really do a bad job of talking about the value and the change around it, versus truly, I think a lot of times we just push things out and think people are going to find it themselves and find value. But I'd love your thoughts on that, on my kind of prescription there.
So first of all, the entire piece on learning and skilling should not be push-based. And even when it is pull
Casey, will you
based,
say that again? I think that's really important.
yeah, what I was saying that from an organization's perspective and from an employee's perspective, we shouldn't think about learning and skilling solutions that are push based. We need platforms that are more pull based. And in pull based solutions also, you need to have a framework that helps employees to go through a journey to identify what is he expecting from this platform. Just think of a survey. When someone logs into the learning platform for the first time, he goes through a bunch of 5 to 10 questions just to understand what is he expecting from this platform. And the platform should be intelligent enough to get all that information, crunch the data, and presents the learning that the employee will need. I think then it becomes very, very powerful. That's one. Two, the other thing is the L&D and the HR team have to start wearing a marketing hat. They need to figure out that, let's say for whatever reason, an employee gets disengaged from the learning solution. How do you bring them back to the learning portal? You know, if an e-commerce company is not getting too much sales, they run promotion, they run campaigns to drive people back. It goes back to the question that Jason was talking about. Show the value to the employee. And when you're showing the value to the employee, that piece also has to be super personalized. So the campaigns that you're running have to be super, super personalized so that it drives back the employee to the learning portal. And finally, show him the impact. Okay, I spend so many hours, I complete so many courses. What has it resulted in my self-development? Have I become the most productive employee within the company? Have I got more opportunities to do mobility within the organization? So those are the key levers that we need to drive. One is stop thinking push-based, think about pull-based. Two, get information about from the employee, what does he expect from the solution? Third, you need to start wearing a marketing hat to drive this like an e-commerce website where you drive traffic back to the people so that they can see the value and the outcome from the solution.
Yeah, I love those three, Casey. That's so important as we think about going forward, is how do we drive it from a marketing standpoint? I mean, we use this slide at the end of everything we do, is that, unless you actually change yourself, nothing's going to change. And I think that a lot of that concept of what you said about marketing, using marketing like that is really, really key. We have time for a couple of questions. I'm going to go ahead and put this up here, put the slide up here about so people can get information about Disprz. But a question just came in on compliance. And the question is, when you actually have to have people do compliance type training, how much should that be push versus pull? And how do you determine balance? Love your thoughts on that.
So, compliance is a system of records.
Yeah.
It will always be push. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
So it's very, very difficult for us to push an employee, for us to make the value realized to an employee that they should go and consume the compliance. In my mind, compliance will always be push-based. You can't avoid that.
Okay. Another question here is,
yeah, I agree.
That compliance training is trying to get your kids to trying to get your kids to eat vegetables. That's kind of funny, Scott. Another question here is, what if we don't know the skills that we need in the organization going forward? How do we start? So
today there are excellent tools available. See, today we live in the data world, and it's very easy to exploit the data to understand what are the skills required for future jobs. Just to give you a couple of examples. In Disprz, we have an internal tool called Skill Architect tool that crawls millions and millions of job postings on a fortnightly basis. It also crawls skill frameworks across the globe. And today, for more than 40 industries, close to more than 3,000 job roles, we have a very, very good understanding about what skills are required. Again, we have to have a very holistic view about what a skill means. For us, a skill means functional skills, leadership skills, the digital tools that you need to use to do your job well, and what are the mindset that an organization is expecting you to have to do your job well. So you need to think about the entire holistic skill framework for your organization. So I think that's a very, very, very important piece that we think organizations are not ready. You know, we work with some large enterprises which have 100,000 employees. And Jason, you know, what is the most shocking thing? They say, we don't have the job description documents for all employees. And my question to you is, if you don't know what are you hiring for, how are you getting the right people for the organization? I think that's the most important point, and that's the starting point for the organization.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my next question, Casey. And actually, there's a question here that's similar to it is, you know, what if I'm not recruiting for skills? You know, what if I'm recruiting based on credentials versus skills? You know, and I don't, you know, I didn't capture the skills in the talent acquisition process. How do I gather them once the employee is inside the organization so that I can push capabilities to them?
I think it goes back to the same thing. You know, we were talking about the second lever. So first of all, it's very, very simple. If employee gives the permission when he's logging into a learning solution, we can actually crawl his LinkedIn profile, look at all the work he's done in his career, understand what kind of job he's done, map it to the data that we have, and say, because you've already done this work, these are the skills you should already have. Step one. Step two, let him evaluate that skill. He could say, I'm proficient in this. I'm just beginning my journey on this skill. That's the second step. The third step is, after the employee has spent, let's say, a quarter within the organization, a manager should give a feedback to this employee on those skills because he's seen the person doing the work. I think there are multiple ways to identify skills, and there are multiple ways to identify the gaps in the skill.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Thank you. Jess, I can tell you're about to kick me out of my questioning. So I will, Casey, thank you so much for taking the time in the middle of the night in Singapore. Really, really appreciate the conversation. Jess, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Jason, and thank you both of you for your insights. And I think it's undisputed that while the term quiet quitting might be a new phenomenon or a TikTok phenomenon, even though most of us are not on TikTok, we've been influenced by TikTok. But the fact that the issue and the challenges of employee engagement and people engagement continue, and certainly learning and development and engaging through managers and giving managers the resources to have conversations and to ask questions is super important. So Casey, thank you for joining from the middle of the night. I hope you get some good rest. Jason, thank you for joining. I just want to remind everybody that we do have our Now Work digital meetup tomorrow and every Friday. Jason and Jess Von Bang started this at the beginning of COVID. Would love for you to join us. It's blossomed into this wonderful community. Talk about engagement. Over 3,000 individuals who just get on every week and just talk and engage, and we check in and we talk about things that are important or whatever that's top of mind. So please join us. Thank you again. We will send out the recording shortly, and we hope that everybody has a good rest of the day or night wherever you are in the world. Take care.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, Casey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.